Welcome to the NFL Show on the Gruely True Sports Network. The NFL Show is brought to you by Replenishing Care and Technologies. Make sure you check them out at rcandt.com. I'm your co-host for the NFL Show, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome in my co-host, NFL beat writer, Sam Teets. How you doing, Sam?
I'm doing great, Mike. How about you?
All right. We're only a few days away from watching football with no fans or next to no fans. And today, we're going to break down the AFC East. Tomorrow, 1 o'clock, we'll be back at our normal time where we'll break down the NFC North and the Green Bay Packers, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, and Minnesota Vikings. But today, we're going to talk a little AFC East. And up until the Cam Newton signing, I think everybody was kind of convinced the Buffalo Bills would be the best team in this division. When I look at this division, Sam, I don't think it's the worst in football. I think that it may have the most question marks in all of the NFL, though.
Yeah, I agree. Because honestly, I mean, we talked about how nicely the Dolphins have committed to their turnaround in the last year or so. I don't know if I put them in competition for the division yet, but I think it's a real toss-up for me. I have trouble picking this division because, to me, it's not really a huge gap between the Buffalo Bills and the other three teams in that division.
Yeah, and for the first time in almost 2 decades, it is uncertain. Maybe this is the year the Jets, who finished 7-6 in 2019 despite a weak offensive line, a less than desirable slate of skill position players, and a quarterback who missed a quarter of the season with mono are ready to rise. Maybe it's the Bills. Maybe they can scheme around still developing quarterback Josh Allen and lean on a great defense. Or maybe the Dolphins, who under Coach Brian Flores swiftly tore down an underperforming roster and rebuild it with a bunch of studs. I mean, this could be that year. The New England Patriots, I think there have to be a lot of questions about, just because is the talent level what it used to be. But we're going to start off with New England. And with New England, I think an uneventful, non-competitive regular season or off-season until they bring in Cam Newton. Now, Cam Newton's a guy that I know you don't have a lot of faith in here, Sam, and you've already written the Patriots off, but you want to tell us why?
Hey, look, I've written the Patriots off because I just don't think they have the talent. I mean, Cam Newton could be as good as it was in 2018. In 2018, Cam Newton wasn't that bad. He was actually pretty good. But at the same point, I think you lost too many guys between the free agency and between opt-outs. You lost at least 3 stars in opt-outs, and Patrick Chung, you're starting right tackle Marcus Cannon, and then Dante Hightower at linebacker. And then you also lost guys like Kyle Van Noy, Danny Shelton, and Jamie Collins in free agency. I just think they've lost too many pieces. They don't have a strong foundation here. And even some of the guys who are supposed to play big roles in this team, like Isaiah Wynn and N'Keal Harry, haven't shown me anything at this point in their careers. They're going to be good NFL players.
Well, don't you think with a more mobile quarterback like Cam Newton, that may help out N'Keal Harry?
It could, but I don't know how mobile Cam Newton's going to be. I haven't seen Cam Newton go around and run since his surgery, since he missed 14 games last year. Let's be honest, even in 2018, he was still mobile. He's still a mobile quarterback, but at the same point, he was much slower in 2018 than had been in previous years.
All right, but what I will go back to is if you look at that Carolina Panthers Super Bowl team, where was all the talent on the offense surrounding him there? Because my point is, if Cam Newton's even 75% of what he was, athletically, he's still better than a lot of guys, and he is the kind of guy that can get stuff done on his own.
That's true. It's not like he had a lot of talent in Carolina, you're correct about that. It was really just Greg Olsen, and then he had a couple of years of Christian McCaffrey, and that was really it. So I can see where you're coming from that point. I'm just hesitant to go with this team. I feel like there's just not enough pieces around him. I don't know what Cam Newton's going to look like. Maybe maybe honestly comes out in the first 2 weeks, he totally changes my mind, and I'm wrong. Which I know you'll probably say it's exactly what's going to happen. But
it is what's going to happen. I mean, when you look at this, I think this division, outside of Adam Gase, there's a lot of quality coaches. But the best coach I've ever seen is in New England still.
Yeah.
And when we look at these quarterbacks, I mean, I like Sam Darnold. I think he's going to be really good. I don't think Josh Allen is. 2 is a year or 2 away, probably. So the best quarterback in this division and the best head coach both reside in New England.
Yeah, I didn't actually consider that from a quarterback perspective before, but I think you're right about that. They have the best quarterback. I recently actually released my quarterback power rankings for week 1. I do have Newton ahead of Darnold and Allen. So they do have the best quarterback. The one really positive thing I'll say about the offense in New England, they have James White. And James White's one of the best receiving running backs in the NFL. Cam Newton got really comfortable with Christian McCaffrey in Carolina. It was a really big help for him in his final real years as a star with the team. I think we'll see a similar thing between him and James White in New England.
Okay, Steve Rizzer, comes in. He says he agrees the Pats roster is average at best. I agree also, but once again, I have a hard time writing off a team that has the best football coach I think that has ever lived and the best quarterback in the division if he can stay healthy. And they can run the ball. And when you look at the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be a lot better just because Bill Belichick, I think, is the greatest defensive coach in NFL history. I mean, this is a guy that probably in 1990, Super Bowl 25, he took apart a Buffalo Bills offense that was one of the best we'd ever seen. And then you go a decade or so later, he wins his first Super Bowl by stopping the greatest show on turf and holding them to 17 points. So I'm not going to write him off. I don't think the roster is good enough. I don't think they can win a Super Bowl, but I think to write them off completely on making the playoffs or possibly even winning this division, I think is big time premature.
I could see them getting 8 to 9 wins. They can make a wild card spot. They could win the division with 9 wins. Who knows? Because it's not going to be a perfect, specifically great division. But I still don't think they're going to take home the crown of the AFC East.
But I have put some doubt in your mind.
You have put some doubt in my mind, Mike. You have done that. You've done that thing you do every single time we have a show like this, where you put a little bit of doubt and you let it grow. But we'll see.
Well, it's Bill Belichick. All right, let's look at the Buffalo Bills, who won the division. Either didn't win the division, but came in second last year. I think they're probably most people's favorites. And I think the big thing here is you get the acquisition of wide receiver Stephon Diggs, which I think is really going to help Josh Allen. But is it really going to help Josh Allen? Because I think Josh Allen's problem is he needs to eliminate disastrous, drive-killing throws, situational inaccuracy that has plagued him during his first 2 seasons. A lot of people say he reminds them of Ben Roethlisberger early in his career. I think that's really a slap in the face to Big Ben. The defense, though, should remain as punishing as it was last year, which gives them a chance also. So I think when you look at the rosters for all the teams in these divisions, Buffalo is hands down the best team in this division.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you talked about the defense a minute ago. I think that's what really separates them from New England in a sense. The Patriots had a very good defense last year, but they got gutted this offseason. They lost 4 or 5 starters between free agency and opt-outs. Meanwhile, Buffalo brings back almost all their stars on the defensive side of the ball. They've even had some new additions. Guys like Mario Addison, I believe, has joined the team. You got A.J. Epinesa in the draft. Those are both guys who could see some time as defensive ends. They get Josh Norman. We'll see if he has anything left in the tank.
Well, my
defense is really what's going to carry them.
My worry here is instead of looking like Ben Roethlisberger, to me, Josh Allen looks more and more like Mark Sanchez's career curve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. It's not. He does not look like Big Ben to me. He doesn't remind me of Big Ben at all, in the sense that he's not a really clutch quarterback. He's not an accurate quarterback. He's got a cannon of an arm, and yet he's one of the worst deep ball passers in the NFL. And that's not because he has bad weapons, it's just because he's inaccurate. And he makes bad decisions. If he did not have his legs, if he wasn't a really good running quarterback, he wouldn't even be a starter in the NFL.
All right, now we'll move to the New York Jets and Adam Gase, who I think is a horrible football coach. But luckily, he's got Sam Darnold, who I think is the long-term answer for them. Mekhi Becton was their first-round pick from Louisville. Hopefully he's better than what I think he's going to be. And I think Adam Gase has got to go 500 here to keep his job.
Yeah, time's got to be running short on Adam Gase, especially because he hasn't shown himself to be a great coach in the past. And they've also run into issues with some of the star players. I know there were some disagreements from him and Le'Veon Bell. I thought Bell played well last year, but at the same point, if you can't get along with some of the guys you're paying a lot of money to, I think that reflects poorly on Gase. And at this point, the Jets have a chance. This is an opportunity for them to win the division for the first time in forever. And if he doesn't capitalize on this, I think he's got to go.
Now, do you think they improved the offensive line enough to really give them a chance?
Not to win a playoff game, potentially to get a wild card spot, but I don't think it's good enough to win a playoff game. I think they've got some better pieces. They're certainly better than they were last year, but I just don't think they're that much better.
What about on the defensive side of the ball?
That's where everything kind of falls apart for me. Once you get rid of Jamal Adams, they're basically punting your defense 5 years into the future because you don't have a superstar on that side of the ball right now. You've got a decent safety combo and Bradley McDougall and Marcus May. But other than that, I'm looking up and down this roster on the defensive side. Quentin Williams, who you drafted in the first round last year, and that's it. You've got no one else that ever stands out to me.
Yeah, but I do think it's possible, even though I just said Cam Newton going in is the best quarterback in this division, I think it's possible halfway through the season we realize Sam Darnold's the best quarterback, and then they do have a chance.
I think Sam Darnold has a higher ceiling in terms of where he's going to be this year or in the future than Cam Newton at this point, because Sam Darnold is a very good quarterback. I like him quite a bit. I know you do too. I think we really got to see him about the final 8 games last year was when we really got to see what he was after he fought the mono. He came back. He's much healthier. And during those final 8 games, Jets would go 6-2. He throws 13 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I think that's the real Sam Darnold. I think that's what he could be. I think that's what he will be. He just has to stay healthy. And hopefully the Jets got enough time on the offensive line that they can actually go out there and let him make some plays.
All right, we look at the Miami Dolphins, a team that won 4 or 5 games last year, which I think was a shock to everybody. Brian Flores and his staff did a great job. Now, it looks like Ryan Fitzpatrick will start the season. Is Ryan Fitzpatrick good enough to get them to the playoffs with the roster that they have here?
No, I don't think he is. I don't think he's good enough to get them to the playoffs, but I think he's good enough to get them, I'll say, 6 or 7 wins with the current roster. It'll be a bit of an improvement on last year. Not significantly, though, but just a good enough improvement. I think a lot of the X factor comes down to what is Tua and when will we see Tua. I think there's a good roster in place here. I think there's a lot of good things going on in Miami. I just don't think this is the year for them. I think it's next year or the year after that.
Well, I think we see Tua by week 5 or 6.
And that would make sense to me because you don't use the pick on a guy that high and then not play him. So to me, I think this is really a situation where it comes down to quarterback play. I think we will see Tua. I think once he gets in there, maybe it'll take a little bit of time to struggle to get used to the NFL. But I think he's going to be a really good quarterback.
All right. I don't think he's a slam dunk the way some people are as rookies, like a Joe Burrow. But I don't know. When you look at this division, I really think there's a possibility here that we could actually get 2 playoff teams from the AFC East.
You know what? It wouldn't shock me with the new 17 format per conference. I think we could see a New York and Buffalo. We could see a New England and Buffalo. We could see New England and New York. I could see almost any combination of teams getting in here. The team I give the least amount of faith to is Miami right now just because they're still kind of in rebuild mode. But I wouldn't be shocked at the same point if 2 teams do get in from this conference. I think they're both getting wiped out in the first round.
Yeah, but it would still be a big accomplishment. And you got teams here like the Bills and the Jets that are only a few moves away. And really, when I look at this, if Josh Allen was to improve a little bit with the Bills' defense, I think the Buffalo Bills are a contender to go a long way.
Yeah, but that comes back down to Josh Allen. Up to this point, I have seen absolutely nothing from Josh Allen that says this guy's going to be able to go out there and win you a playoff game. The Bills' defense is a great defense, probably a top 5, if not top 6 or 7 defense in the NFL at this point. But I do not trust Josh Allen at all.
All right, Steve says we will see Tua this year. No way he takes a red shirt year, and Fitz won't keep him off the field. And I think that what we've seen with Fitzpatrick is he's a hot and cold guy. So the first cold streak, whether it's in the first 2 weeks or it's week 4 and 5, is when we'll see Tua.
Yeah, that's always his deal. Also, someone with a guy like Nick Foles, where you go in, you maybe have 5 or 6 really good games, but after that, you kind of cool off and you never get back to that hot streak during a year. I think we will see Tua. I think Fitzpatrick's magic will wear off eventually, but for now, he's going to be the star. Just let Tua get his feet kind of wet in the NFL.
All right, Steve throws in, if the Jets make the playoffs, Darnold is their guy. I think Darnold's their guy either way. If they don't make the playoffs, it's going to be because they don't have enough players around him yet. What we saw last year, Sam, is they started off, 1-5? And
yeah, they started off very poorly.
Yeah, and then almost made the playoffs after that. They played really well after he came back. They were a completely different team without him. And I just think that a lot of this is going to ride on that Mekhi Becton pick, because he's a guy that I think is either going to be a boom or he's going to be a big-time bust, and they can't afford to have a bust first-round tackle pick right after, 2 years after they picked their quarterback of the future.
Well, yeah, this is a bad situation for Darnold, in my opinion, because he's at a point where you might be the guy moving forward, but the Jets are nowhere near, they're not rebuilding nearly as quickly as Miami did. They're nowhere near, in my opinion, a position where you could help Darnold out. I mean, they don't have the offensive weapons. They have some running backs, but no real good receivers out there. The offensive line's still questionable. You don't have a defense at all. So I just feel bad for Darnold because I think he's stuck in a position where he'll never succeed in New York because there just aren't enough pieces around that entire team.
All right, so who wins this division, and how many teams do make the playoffs?
You've gone and done this to me now where I'm thinking, you put New England back in my head. I was sure they were going to get kicked out. Now you can't put New England back in. But I still think Buffalo wins the division. I'll give them 10-6 with Buffalo. I think they'll take the lead. And then I'll give New England the 7th seed. I'll say New England gets the 7th seed with 8 wins.
So I've changed your mind again, Sam.
Yeah, you have. You put that now. Now look, no one's going to fall flat this year. I'm going to feel like an idiot for changing my mind.
Yeah, but maybe I just did it for that simple reason.
You might have. I really don't know at this point.
All right, so I think Buffalo wins this division. I think their defense is way too good. I think there's a shot the Patriots make the playoffs. I don't think they will. I think the Patriots will win 7 or 8 games. I think they'll be on the borderline of that 7th spot. I could see them getting it. But I also think this. If Bill Belichick with this roster can come out and win 7 or 8 games, that's a pretty damn good season for him, especially if Cam Newton rounds into shape and actually does look like he could be their starting quarterback for the next 4 or 5 years, because then Belichick can start to rebuild this team and get them back to possibly where they were at one point.
Yeah, I wouldn't put it past Bill Belichick to make a quick rebuild of this situation, to go out there and have them competing at a high level. Maybe not this year, but next year and even the year after that. I think he could do that. This team certainly got some pieces left of it, and they know how to recruit guys and get the most out of them. So I wouldn't put anything past New England at this point. I say still a difficult situation seeing them making the playoffs, but I think they really do have a chance because of Bill Belichick.
All right, so we do have good news in the NFL, though, because among the new conditions of the 2020 NFL game due to the COVID-19 pandemic was the prohibition of the recent tradition of players exchanging their jerseys after games, and now that rule has been augmented. So actually, players can exchange jerseys if they send them through the mail to each other. And they have to be washed first.
Why? Why? I don't understand. This doesn't make any sense to me. I read that too before the show. Yeah, but you're running around tackling each other. And you're running around tackling each other. No, none of it makes sense. Absolutely none of it.
Steve says he's got the Bills winning it at 10-6 and nobody else making the playoffs. I'm kind of leaning towards Steve. It wouldn't surprise me if one of these other teams maybe jumps up and grabs the last spot at 7-9 or 8-8. But I pretty much agree with Steve on that also. I don't know what Sam's thinking by picking the Patriots to make the playoffs.
I've done this to myself. But
yeah, I set you up before we even came on air.
Pretty much, yeah, you did. You're playing mind games out here, Mike. But with Mekhi Becton, what do you think the biggest issue with him is? Because I know you talked about him in the past. You did a little film breakdown of him at one point. What do you think his biggest issue is transitioning to the NFL?
I don't think his technique's that good. What I see is a lot of lean up top where he kind of leans forward. You lean forward in the NFL, you're going to get beat all day. That can be fixed. But I just think he's slow. He's a big dude, and I just don't see it. And what I really don't see with him is I saw in games against lower-level competition in Louisville where you'd seen pancake a guy. But he's pancaking a 230-pound defensive end. You're not going to be able to hit. I mean, there's not too many 220, 230-pound defensive ends in the NFL. And when you saw Louisville play better competition like the Clemsons, you didn't see manhandling guys like that. So it kind of brings me back as a Bengals fan to Big Daddy Wilkinson, who played in the late 90s. The Bengals picked him first because he had all these sacks. But all the sacks were against like Illinois, Northwestern, and Purdue. He got nothing when he played against Michigan and Michigan State. So when I see him, I just think that there is a lot that has to be fixed there. And I don't know that New York coaching staff-wise is able to fix that. That's my problem with Becton. But it's also why I say he's either a huge boom or he's a huge bust, because I think the ability is there if he's coached correctly. I just question a lot of things I see on the film, especially his ability to gain leverage against somebody who is a lot bigger. Not bigger than him, but just a bigger size defensive end than what he's going to face playing against Eastern Kentucky.
I think one of the other issues we mentioned was his hand placement, right? His hands were too wide and like guys get inside of him.
Yeah, he has a tendency when he reaches up with his hands, he'll be like this. And the problem with being like this, if you see my elbow, as a coach, you're going to tell a guy to attack here, here, and here. The biggest one is here. If you block, and a lot of guys don't know this, but if you just turn in here, so when you're hitting, this elbow is down, you can't hit my elbow and move me. If I'm like this, you can move me all day. So a lot of it is just hand placement, not so much hand placement, but where the elbows are. But he also has a tendency to get his hands up, outside of the frame. He'll be out here instead of being up here. Now, when he's playing at Louisville and he's playing lesser competition, when he puts his hands here, he's strong enough they're not going anywhere. You put your hands here on one of the bosses, they're just going to break your arm and go by you. So you got to be able to get up inside, keep the elbows inside so that can't be attacked. And then the only thing the defensive end can do really is try to attack your shoulder. But if you attack my shoulder, I can actually bring my hand up underneath, reset my hand here, and get my other hand here and still control you. So the main thing I look at, and that's why I like Jonah Williams, it's not because he's a Cincinnati Bengal, but it's because when you see him, his hand placement is tight, elbows are down. Same thing if you watch Anthony Munoz back in the day. But there's a lot of offensive linemen that think that they can just strong-arm people, especially coming from college. Because if you're in college, even if you're playing at Ohio State, how many guys do you really face that are NFL quality defensive ends? So if I'm 320 pounds and I can bench a lot of weight and I eat a lot of Burger King, yeah, I can lean on most guys and hold them there. But when I got to go up against J.J. Watt, J.J. Watt's going to hand me my ass if I do that.
Yeah, and we saw on tape, he kind of manhandled, like you said, he manhandled a lot of guys. He's one-armed almost SWAT guys in college, but those players, some of them are going to be safety level strength in the NFL. He's going to be competing against a whole new level of competition. I don't see him.
You have a hard time finding a guy there that is a big, strong defensive end that he's blocking. I mean, it's basically he'll run through, throw one arm out, and you see a guy go flying, and everybody puts that on film on ESPN, and they go, oh, look, he's so strong. Well, yeah, he outweighs this guy by 120 pounds, and this guy's going to be working at a car wash or a Denny's or something when he gets out of college.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there's no comparison sometimes between those low-level college teams and actually playing NFL defensive ends.
Yeah, and even in the Big Ten, like I said, how many guys are starting level defensive ends in the Big Ten last year?
Not many, honestly. Like Chase Young, but he was on Ohio State. So
yeah, there'll be a handful of guys that play in the NFL that were D tackles or D ends. There's not going to be not every defensive end. The defensive end at Indiana is not going to be playing in the NFL. The defensive end at Purdue is not playing in the NFL. The guy from Illinois is not playing in the NFL. Most of these guys aren't NFL-level players. And the thing that people freak out, they love the combine. If you think the combine has any bearing on whether somebody can play in the NFL or not, you're crazy. If you think how many times I can bench press a weight or how high I can jump really matters, you're nuts. I mean, you got to look at the technique that the guys are using. And a lot of these guys, like I said, since they've been in high school, they've just physically been better than everybody else. So they can do whatever the hell they want and get by with it. Tim Tebow, he had the throwing motion where he had to hitch, he winds up and he throws. It works in college, but in the NFL, it never could be changed. Even when he went to New England and everybody would freak out, oh, he looked so good in practice today. He gets in the game, goes back to the same thing once the bullets fly. So the problem is coaching at the college and the high school level, because Tim Tebow was athletically so good. That coach, when it was Urban Meyer or whoever his high school coach was, didn't really worry about changing anything because they're not worried about Tim Tebow, because a guy like Urban Meyer is worried about Urban Meyer. And, Urban Meyer just trying to get his. He's proved that every place he's been, and he'll prove it again in a couple of years where he'll magically be healthy again and be coaching somewhere again.
Yeah, I mean, he'll come back.
You've ever had the heart problem. His heart problem was he didn't have Tim Tebow anymore. And then he went to Ohio State. And now, Ohio State's got all kind of scandals going on, so he got the hell out of Ohio State.
Yeah, now he's on TV because obviously that's where it happened. And he'll come back to college eventually. But, I mean, that's what happens, though, with coaches at the high school and college level, though. They're trying to win games. They're not necessarily always thinking about what's best for the players.
Well, the one thing I've always noticed is this. Most football coaches are so wrapped up in coaching football that their entire self-worth comes through if their team wins or not. And you see a lot of guys who get out of whack on what their priorities are just because the value they place on themselves is whether my team won or not. Basically, their self-identity comes from whether they win or lose football games.
Yeah, I can see that. I certainly can see that.
Hey, I can guarantee it because up till about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was making money to coach football, my self-worth was through that. Until I realized there was something much bigger you could do and a mark you could leave that was much bigger than how many football games you won.
Yeah, that's what comes from helping out players, helping players get better on and off the field.
Yeah, I had an old coach tell me a few years ago, he said, you know what? When you get to heaven, God's not going to pull out a scroll and say, well, you lost this game. You lost this championship game right here. You lost this game right here, so you can't come in. Because in the end, that doesn't matter. It's just a mark. But the mark you leave on people's lives is what you should be shooting for. And there's a lot of coaches, especially college coaches, that don't understand that. I'd say that's most of them. I mean, Dabo Swinney, you're at Clemson. But Dabo Swinney said a few years ago, if they paid the players, I'd just quit. Dabo Swinney makes $10 million a year, whatever it is. He can quit whenever he wants. He's set for life. But he's got players out there killing themselves for him while he is this great God to everybody now. And by that one comment, it tells me that everybody that glorifies and deifies Dabo Swinney, they're way off base here. Because Dabo's not worried about what's in it for the players. He's getting his money. If they're going to pay the players, he's going to get mad and leave. What the hell is that?
No, I'm with you on that. I'm with you on Dabo. Honestly, I am. I think Dabo's got a lot of hypocrisy in what he does and what he says. I think people often overlook it just because he's a winning football coach.
Yeah. And, I mean, he's a great football coach. There's a case to be made that he's better than Nick Saban even.
You could make that case.
Yeah. Do you like how I snuck that Nick Saban in?
Yeah, just a little bit. You slid that in there.
I don't think he is because Nick Saban was also a very good defensive coordinator with the Browns. I don't think Dabo Swinney would be able to go to the NFL and coach successfully.
No, probably not. He's too used to doing what he does at Clemson at this point.
Well, he's one of those raw guys, too. Raw guys that don't work out too well in the NFL. Pete Carroll's about the only one I can think of that's worked out.
Yeah, same here. He's the only one who has held the job, I think, long term.
Yeah, I remember guys like Lou Holtz, he goes to New York with the Jets and completely flamed out, tried to run the option with a bad leg Joe Namath.
Yeah, anyone can tell you how that was going to go, too.
Yeah. All right. Anything else NFL-wise we want to discuss? Did you watch Hard Knocks yet?
I haven't watched Hard Knocks yet. I have not gotten out to it.
Well, I've made it through all. I guess there's another episode coming up tomorrow night or something, but I don't have HBO anymore since they got rid of boxing, so I just signed up for the free trial for a week, like yesterday. That way I could watch all the HBO real sports documentaries. But I also would like to say there's a very good Elvis Presley documentary from 2 years ago that people would really be interested in.
Oh, yeah? Maybe I'll check it out, but I don't have HBO either. So.
Have you ever heard of Elvis Presley?
I've heard of Elvis Presley, Mike. I know Elvis.
I mean, you've never seen a movie, so I thought maybe you never heard music before.
Listen, I'm not that uncultured, okay? I'm only slightly uncultured.
All right. I want to remind everybody to check out Replenishing Care and Technologies, our main sponsor for the show, at rcandt.com. You can follow Sam Teets at SamTeets33. You can follow me at Grueling Truth. And also go check out thegruelingtruth.com for all of our articles and shows. All of our podcasts can be heard pretty much anywhere you find podcasts, including iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher, Spotify, you name it, we're there. You can hear our live show every day at 1 o'clock, Monday through Friday, except for on holidays, where we do it at 8 o'clock at night. And you can see those on Facebook, on our group page. You can see it on my own private page on Facebook. You can see it on YouTube Live. You can see it on Twitch, Periscope. Pretty much anywhere. We are also on Rockfin, which you can go check them out. And the great thing about Rockfin is, unlike YouTube, nothing is censored. And if you sign up for Rockfin, I think it's only like $4 or $5 a month, but then you're signed up to listen to anybody with premium content on there. So make sure you check them out also. But for now, until 1 o'clock tomorrow, when me and Sam will be back to preview the NFC North, I'm Mike Goodpaster. He's Sam Teets. You've been listening and watching The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.